Hello. It came about 9:15. A certain person was going to be in the room that I could not go in. I did not want to be presumptuous in that they would ever elect me as anything to do with the primeval, or the prime ministerial for that fact, in any position of eloquence that would lay her bald facts upon the state of the future of the empire. The question only in my mind was which empire was it going to be? That was it the noise that I was certain came from next door, or it was not coming. It was coming from the room that Mademoiselle was going to knock up. But to be Iron Lady number 2, I could not equate any strength to the numbers, for instance, fighting against the people who they called men at Agincourt, that Henry V by William Shakespeare was referring to as my friends. My friends. Once more into the breach, my friends. And you wonder how many friends you have when most of your party are in fact walking out on you. There wasn't there, the case of the young woman with the apartment who was claiming damages for the fact that the occupant of it had not paid any money in rent for some considerable period. And these mainly were the periods since their boyfriends had long left them pregnant. In effect, that as much in the halls of fame as such as those, whether they be in the kingdom eventual of heaven, long gone the first day of the summer, long gone the end of the reign of King Charles I, 1649, ending with his beheading or his hanging. At the end of the day, how you were, where they lay you, and how expurgate your remains, other than those more importantly, how perceived is the new empiric empire that will call itself of these Americas, America, than a body of entanglement of the remains of the effects of the skull-mongering of pirates and the effects of worse musicians than in fact Bird had any chance of defying upon a piano keyboard. It's only for the fact that the piano had been so depriving of Bird his ethics, to his credence towards anything to becoming queen, that the future of music must surely lay in the invention of something by no one greater than, well, me really. Or it was going to be in the invention of that abomination which surely in any other dynasty other than Queen Anne, after the reinstatement in that glorious revolution of 1689, where the Stuarts were running effectively, had been for Scotland or from it, that was electing by Cristofori an esteemed persuasion to the Medicis in the instructions that they would be some 9 of this new invention invented, that equates, does it more, to the pathology of the knocking of the latest monarch, who ever will be, never again the greatest leader of empire, after the knock, surely is it more than 3, on the door of the House of Parliament, whereby each year a queen is expected to announce her arrival. Tell me, am I really less English or less German than, for instance, the person who was not going to challenge the leadership of UKIP because they didn't know any more what English was truly, or they didn't know any more how to found the fact that Catherine of Aragon really must have had some grievance against her husband that was unfounded by Henry VIII placing her some distance away. But then I was reminded that these girls that were going to be chosen for their place in the courtroom, that was in this elect going to be sued for the rent owing, had really no argument in their defence when they said that the room was in such a shambles that in fact they thought that Oliver Cromwell was in fact the real, beginning with B, so-and-so, which everybody eventually said that he was. But the fact is, isn't it, that if you wanted a solo, you would go to, not the Houses of Parliament, you would be more inclined to go to any school of music, any school of learning. Even you would go on the open line to the Open University and learn all about it, wouldn't you, from the pole, for instance, next door. But how would you differentiate Englishness, Germanicness, or the pole from next door as to any authenticity to its placement that writes to the judge and says, I think we should be let off this case because of the degradation which the landlord places. It was in such credential that I remember this fine lady had expired that if her husband was going to be taking her again to this little bay which in Menorca they frequented frequently, or less frequently, by Pathos than some of the statesmen of emperors themselves, then this fact was alone going to prove their reunification into the second empire of monogamy. That was in fact going to make the Mormons seem all the more credible. It was, for instance, that the name Aragon, as opposed to anything that's born in arrogance, is not explicit, is it, in any pianoforte solo that Bartolomeo Cristofori is in any way ever accredited to having given when his invention of the piano by some year 1705, 1709 meant that the future music of a country would in fact be abandoned so far through the vestiges of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, whose Germanic and ponderous expedition of so many notes in, for instance, the overture to the Magic Flute, that you want to find a way, don't you, of knocking your neighbour up and singing the Polish national anthem with the accompaniment by who was going to be Paderewski, until you realized that it was not a Pole, it was in fact a German. Such these vestiges of preponderant fears of those memories written and those letters opening today, revealing memories in memoriam, as in such quills of memorandum, of those instances of the first day of the sun, 1st of July, 1916, or I was born yesterday. Castile and Aragon, the two preeminent Christian kingdoms, are united under Isabella in 1479, aren't they? That by the time, isn't it, that the so-called Catholic monarchs, the Les Rey Catholiques, Spain subsequently emerging as a single political entity, with the Inquisition acting as a unifying force. The Inquisitors concentrate such attention as the Jews expelling around 400,000 from Spain for refusing Christian baptism. That makes pathos, doesn't it, by the fact, or quaint, put it simply, it makes a comedy, doesn't it, of the fact that King Henry VIII is accused of being anti-Italian or anti-Catholic in anything to do with anything regarding the execution of Thomas Cromwell, his advisors and his religious, and those of Becket, who were going to chuck it, weren't they? Any ideas that they were going to be less than true to the fact of their truth, that their own ethics would be found out. But the inquisitors of these inquisitions that went through the years pertaining to those of Henry VIII, those pertaining to the marriage of Mary I of England and King Philip II of Spain, whose grievance manifests itself not so much in the marriage, during which pre-Elizabeth I of the 1553 was going to raise its ugly head until the year 1588, when you could come and rectify such a derision created in monogamy, by the fact that you could then bring your whole fleet of ships across and have them named after the British Empire, when the Catholic faith would eventually become monarch and imperial custom to your country. That you would want, wouldn't you, not to vote for UKIP if you thought that the Catholics had any chance of going to be here in any way more greatly than the Italian dictator Benito Mussolini, for instance, who was it said that he was less Catholic than chaotic. But the fall of Granada in 1492 meant that the Moorish kingdom, Columbus, reached the Americas. And at the end of the Treaty of Tordesillas, drawn up 1494 under the approving eye of the Pope, Spain and Portugal, dividing the New World between them, and Portugal gets Brazil and Spain takes the rest of the modern empire, doesn't it, Latin America. But you will be sad to know, won't you, that at the 1516, on the death of Fernando, not me, on the death, sadly, of Fernando, his grandson Carlos I, succeeding to that Spanish throne, 3 years later he became Holy Roman Emperor as Charles V, adding Germany, Austria and the Low Countries to his kingdom, that throughout his reign waged almost incessant war against his many enemies, principally the French, the Protestants and the Europe's nation states, lagging out in the War of the Spanish Succession, which by 1701, the Spanish Succession, the Bourbon French claimant, is opposed to that of the Holy Roman Empire, the Emperor, winning out to become Philip V. The British pick up Gibraltar and Minorca as Spain declines, so it moves into the French sphere of influence. How much I wanted that for her husband to take her back to that small bay in Menorca where lovers once were. Thank you, viewer. This is about it. Pathos.